We just got a message in the chat from Vanessa just asking, would you prefer cameras on or off?
Okay, thanks, Vanessa. It would be great if people put their cameras on, but I understand if you can't for some reason. I really understand. You might be doing other things or whatever while you're trying to listen in. So I do understand that, but it's nicer for Lexi and I if we can actually see you, because it feels like you're there. I don't know. Yeah. But I appreciate you might be able to put your camera on. All right, so we might make a start. So welcome. Thank you so much for coming along to our training day. It's so nice to have you all here. I would like to record this session. Does anyone have a problem with that? It's just for people that can't be here today. So we've got some people who have got exams and things on. So I'm just going to press record.
Recording in progress.
Right, so my name is Rachel. I'm the support group coordinator. I've probably had contact with most of you. I also have a program assistant called Karen, who you'll meet at another session. So we are your contacts while you're a volunteer at Wayahead. So anything you need, you can contact Karen or I. We have Lexi today, who is one of our valued facilitators. We're so lucky to have Lexi as a volunteer. And she's going to talk about her experience of running a group. So she's been running the groups through COVID, so she's done online and face-to-face groups. So we'll hear from Lexi. Lexi will give a short presentation and she'll let you know when the time is to ask questions. So please think of all the questions you would like to ask Lexi in regards to facilitating. So we may not run for the whole 2 hours today. We'll just see how it all goes, but we just allow that time just in case, but we might wrap it up early depending on questions. So I'm going to ask you, if you're able, I know Peter might be driving at this point in time, to just introduce yourself and tell us what brought you here today. It just helps Lexi as the presenter to know who she's presenting to. And I probably will ask you to do this at the session on Friday as well. So sorry about that. So we might just go around and we might start with Lisa.
Hi, everyone. I think I came across this opportunity last year, but I wasn't able to do it because of uni placements. I was doing other things as well. So I'm currently studying a master's in counselling and psychotherapy at Western Sydney. Last year, I thought it would be really good to have this experience just to get to know the field and stuff. And I think I really admire the Wayahead as an organization, so I just really wanted to be a part of it. And luckily, another round came along, so here I am. I've run Hearing Voices group before with people who hear voices. That could be people with schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder. So that was a really great opportunity. I've also run groups with young carers with an organization called Little Dreamers. So that's mostly for me, my group was 12-year-olds and under who have to care for family members. So yeah, I'm really interested in the anxiety group as well, because I have lived experience with that. And yeah, I really want to see what it's like.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lisa. I can see Peter's got his hand up. Does that mean you want to go next, Peter, or you want to say something?
It was an accident because he's driving.
So please feel free, Peter, to jump in when you're able to, but if not, that's okay too. So we might go over to Ben.
Hello, everybody. My name's Ben. I'm really excited to be a part of this and really throw myself into the deep end, so to speak. I've never facilitated a group before in this capacity. I've just completed a diploma in counselling, and I want to help people in a capacity of being able to listen, to empathise, to create the space for them to talk about their issues and concerns. And I think I have a natural ability to be a good listener and not form any judgments about people and their stories. And I feel as though in my life's experience, I've been able to be able to create an environment to, help people find their strength or their inner voice. So with all that in mind, I'm here to fine tune my I guess natural demeanor and into being able to be a good facilitator. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ben. So I'm pretty bad with pronunciation, so I'll give it a go. So is it Aya? Can you hear me, Aya?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. My name is Aya. I'm studying Master of Public Health Extension. And I'm really interested in mental health in general. And it's mostly because I myself have struggled and I'm still struggling with mental health. I was actually diagnosed last year with OCD. So I feel like I would love to give back to others through these sessions, but also I believe that it may help me as well.
That's great. Thank you. A lot of our facilitators have lived experience and they go on a journey themselves when they facilitate the group. So they often say how beneficial it is for them to facilitate. So thank you, Aya. Ria?
My name is Ria. I'm currently a second year student studying psychology, and I kind of came across Wayahead in one of my university group chats where one of my peers highly recommended facilitating a group, and they thought it was really rewarding. So I thought I'd give it a shot myself, and thought I'd get involved and help out in the community facilitating a group, and kind of aiding conversation between people who have lived anxiety experiences.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And Vanessa?
Hi, everyone. I'm Vanessa. A few of you might know my mom as well, Joanne. So she says hi. So I study psychology at UNSW with Rhea. So, I mean, we may not have interacted, but we're in the same cohort. What brought me here was, I guess I've always had a bit of a knack for helping other people. And, I think like everyone else here, we've all kind of got our own experiences to bring to the table. And I guess, it's mostly just about gaining that experience, because I feel as though if I'm going to become a psychologist, I want as much under my belt as I can get, because I feel like I have a duty of care to be the best I can be. And, every opportunity, I guess, that has come my way, I've been trying to, really pick up on it. Because, anxiety is one of the highest disorders. It's the most prevalent disorders in the community. So I think it's just one that I would like to know more about, because I feel like it's something that everyone will experience at least at one point or another. So yeah, that's me.
Great. Thank you, Vanessa, and welcome. Mahmoud?
Thank you, Rachel. Apologies for the camera and the issues, but I've came across Wayahead through research, and I've just finished my undergraduate degree in psychology. And this is one of another organization that I am volunteering with, just trying to build up that experience and just that networking ability to just come to the level and understand those who may be experiencing different encounters in life. And I think from the reviews that I've heard about Wayahead, this will be a very good opportunity to learn and progress in life. And it teaches you a lot about other people who come from different parts of life. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you and welcome. And Harley, can you hear me? Yep. Wonderful. Thank you so much. What a great bunch. And Peter, did you want to say anything? I understand if you can't.
No, yeah, I do. Sorry, I just lost the page. It's taken a long time to find my way back. So, yeah, a bit harder to navigate on a phone than a PC. So, yeah, I've got time to introduce myself. Hello, everyone. I'm Peter. And I live with complex PTSD, which anxiety is a part of, and a lot of grief. And for 33 years now, I've been part of a recovery process from that. And that's enriched me with lots of opportunities to facilitate groups, be a part of self-help groups, mentor men and women with mental health and addiction issues. I go into jails and into hospitals and run groups there and speak to people. So I offer sort of personally mentorship, especially for men, and certainly, I've got a good ear to speak to my sisters as well. So, so it's certainly what keeps me on the level and keeps my demons at bay. So I need people to share that life experience with, to be able to stay focused and not get lost in my own history. So and I just see this as another great opportunity to to fulfil what's become a purpose in my life. So I'm really happy to be aboard and a part of this. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Peter. And you get the award for multitasking today. So glad you could be with us today. So I'm going to hand it over to Lexi now, and she'll introduce herself and do her presentation. Thank you, Lexi.
No problem. It's lovely to meet you all and hear about how you came to find Wayahead, and it's always great to have a lot of new volunteers. So it's nice to meet you all. So can everyone hear me okay? Because sometimes my headphones can be a bit, okay, perfect. So I have been a support group facilitator at Wayahead for 2 years now, and it's gone by very quickly. Facilitating support groups at Wayahead has been an amazing experience for me, both from an academic and a personal learning perspective. So before I delve into my experiences with the group, I thought it might be helpful if I explain a little bit about my background and what drew me to Wayahead and how I came about finding the support groups. So I'm 23 years old and I'm nearing completion of my honours year in psychology at Monash University, but online. I majored in psychology as an undergrad at the University of Sydney. Throughout the 3 years of my undergrad, I enjoyed studying the theory of psychology. However, I was eager to gain some practical experience. And with the goal of clinical psychology in mind, I really felt a need to put the skills I was learning into practice. So halfway through my third year, I started researching mental health organisations based in Sydney. I emailed probably every non-for-profit in Sydney, in the Sydney area, and time after time I would receive emails that read, "I'm sorry, we can't offer you any kind of volunteer position at this stage." So you can imagine my disappointment. A few more rejection emails later, I came across Wayahead and saw that they had, unlike many other organisations, an actual volunteer application that could be filled out. So finally, feeling a little bit more hopeful at this point, I filled out an application and was thrilled to hear back from Rachel a few weeks later, explaining to me that there were a few facilitator positions available in different locations across Sydney. So I didn't actually go through training. I jumped right into it, but I worked with another facilitator for some time, and I quickly got the hang of things just through observation. So at the start of 2020, I began officially facilitating an online Zoom group on Wednesday nights that I still co-facilitate with Paul, who's been a facilitator for a long while now. I'm not sure exactly how long, Rachel, but for quite a while, and he also works at Wayahead as well. And once we emerged out of lockdown in 2020, I began co-facilitating at an in-person support group in Glebe as well, also with Paul. So before I move on to talk about the challenges and highlights of facilitating, does anyone have any questions at this point? No? Okay. So I'll first outline what I believe your key tasks and role as a facilitator is and should typically consist of. So your first responsibility is to begin the group by introducing yourself and reading out the do's and don'ts that will be provided to you by Wayahead, and ensure that every attendee has either logged on or showed up before we read the do's and don'ts. So I'm not sure if Rachel has explained this to you, but essentially it's a code of conduct that we like to follow that just outlines and ensures everyone feels comfortable. So if you're running the group on Zoom, it's important to ensure that every attendee has just their first name visible. This is really important because we want to retain a degree of anonymity for security and confidentiality reasons. Your second responsibility or task is to provide everyone with the opportunity to introduce themselves, similar to what we've just done now. So, you know, in this introduction, you can ask people how they've been doing, potentially outline what anxiety disorder or symptoms they might be suffering from if they feel comfortable disclosing, and or identify anything that they might want to bring up later in the group. This can be a nice way to set the agenda and make sure that every member has had an opportunity to share or discuss what they want to discuss at some point during the group. And throughout the group, you also have the task of informally mediating, encouraging conversation, but also allowing group members to feel heard and not spoken over. So we like to maintain a sense of equality in the group, and, you know, facilitators and group attendees are on the same level predominantly. You don't want to sort of have that kind of hierarchy that's not so conducive in a peer support group. So that's been, yeah, that's a good little piece of advice there. And at the close of the group, it can be helpful to end with a checkout. So in this time, it can be helpful to ask each member of the group, you know, individually how they felt the group was, if there's anything they wanted to share at the end, and generally if they feel better since attending the group. Yeah, it's just a nice way to again ensure that every member has had the opportunity to share if they want to. So to get the not as fun part out of the way, I'll discuss some potential challenges that you might come across as a facilitator and how to best deal with them. So the first challenge I would say is ensuring that the topic of conversation remains appropriate. By this, I mean it's worth considering that often attendees come with their own experiences, sensitivities, and in many cases, trauma. So as such, it's important to ensure that if a member raises something that might serve as a trigger to anybody, you know, this could range from the discussion of abuse in detail or any kind of derogatory or discriminatory language is not tolerated. And it's the role of the facilitator to politely shut this down. For example, there have been instances where someone has talked about how awful a particular antidepressant medication is, and this was something we had to shut down because this could upset, you know, members of the group that might be on this medication or wanting to try it. And this comes into the idea of unsolicited advice from group members. So we try to avoid using language such as "you should do X and Y." This is discouraged. You know, again, this comes back to the issue of everyone being on an even playing field. And so the use of non-direct language alerts group members to their options without them feeling judged. So for example, you can say, "Oh, something that's really helped me is this," as opposed to "you should do this." The second challenge is ensuring that everyone gets heard. Sometimes a support group has members that are particularly vocal, and this can be a challenge, particularly on Zoom when we have that audio delay. So while it is, of course, reasonable for a few attendees to have more to say than others in certain weeks, it's important as a facilitator to ensure that everyone has had the opportunity to share if they wanted to. That said, there are some members that may not want to share, you know, in that week or that session, and that's perfectly fine too. So just ensuring everyone has that option but doesn't feel pressured to speak if they don't want to. The third challenge is attempting to keep the topic of conversation to the experience of anxiety disorders and mental health. Again, it's perfectly acceptable to discuss other matters, particularly if people don't feel like talking about mental health issues at some groups after a certain period of time. However, it's important to notice if the conversation is veering too far off topic. If this does happen, it can be useful to check in with everyone and say something along the lines of, "Look, we can totally keep talking about non-anxiety related matters, but if anyone does have something they want to share that came up this past week related to mental health, please feel free to share." So now I've covered all the challenges I can think of when facilitating a support group, I'd now like to talk about the joys of facilitating. So facilitating a support group at Wayahead has been one of the most rewarding things I've done. Providing people with a safe, supportive space to discuss their experiences with anxiety, free from shame, stigma, and judgment has been incredibly rewarding. Every time a support group ends, my motivation to progress in my studies and work towards the goal of clinical psychology is reinforced. On a personal note, having my own lived experiences with anxiety, the group has helped me not feel so alone and has demonstrated to me the value in sharing lived experience and how remedial it can be. During COVID-19 in particular, the support group served as many attendees' primary form of social interaction. So the impact that just volunteering a few hours a week or fortnight or month can have on attendees is really moving, and part of why, no matter how busy I am, I always endeavor to show up and be the best facilitator I can be. These groups have also taught me a lot about anxiety and anxiety disorders. So for some of you in the more academic side of psychology, reading about the symptoms and criteria of anxiety disorders in the DSM in a textbook is one thing, but being able to listen to people's stories, challenges with treatment, and their individual experience has enhanced my understanding so much more. So yes, that comes to the end of my formal presentation, but if any questions, please ask away.
So Lexi, I'll ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
So you said that you're facilitating the group, but you also have a lived experience.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, do you ever get triggered in the group? Is there anything that ever makes you feel uncomfortable?
No. Like my experience with anxiety has been pretty mild. So I would say there hasn't been anything that has personally triggered me. The only thing I can think of, and this is sort of separate to anxiety, but so I'm half American, and so often this topic comes up about how awful America is and how like, scary it is, and how like people would never go there because they'd probably get shot in the street. that has gotten to me. And when things like that come up, again, that's an example of, okay, maybe we should be mindful of the fact that some people do go to America, or let's not. Again, just an opportunity to sort of veer the conversation away from anything that might upset people. So I'd say that's the only thing, which is a really random, example, but that's probably the only thing that I've personally felt a bit. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, it could be all sorts of things happen in groups, and
That's
people
the
say all
thing.
sorts of things. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, Vanessa, did you have a question?
I do have a question. So in particular, my question is in regards to like boundaries. So I know that they went over this in another in a university volunteer position I did, where they made it clear to us that our role was to purely be support, and it was inappropriate to, for instance, add them on Facebook, or I guess where be sure of what kind of bond we would want. So I guess I wanted to know a bit more about that in particular.
Yeah, a good question, because in clinical psych and traditional psychology training, you're taught to, you're not meant to talk about yourself unless it's absolutely necessary, and you are sort of in this guide position, and social media and keeping a low profile on social media is recommended when you're a clinical psychologist. In this case, because it's a peer support group, I found it to be a little bit different. I am careful, but I will share things about my personal life that I think might be helpful and of benefit to the group members, because it is a more relaxed, less structured environment. So I mean, look, again, this is also up to the facilitator. I don't share my social media, and no one has ever really asked me, can I add you on social media? So I haven't come across that particular scenario, but I would say, it's completely up to you. If you want to use this as an opportunity to practice how you might be, later when you're a clinical psychologist, then you don't need to share. It's not absolutely necessary. And Rachel, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's completely up to you. So I share a little bit, and I think there's no issue with that. Yeah, I hope that helps. Sorry if it was a little vague.
So just to clarify, Vanessa, and we'll also talk about this with the session with Karen about running the group, we ask that our facilitators don't share their last name or anything that I can identify their last name, so like an email address or a Facebook page. We want you to keep that and your mobile number. We want you to keep that private. It's merely because in the past, unfortunately, we have had some incidents because you're dealing with people that are very vulnerable, and it's amazing what people can find out about you and your family if they have your last name. So I don't want to alarm anyone at all. Everything was dealt with, but it was a bit of a wake-up call to myself. So I just want our facilitators to be really careful with their personal details. Thanks, Lexi.
Okay, there you go. Problem.
Lexi, regarding, I guess, the way that a session unfolds and evolves from the beginning, and say when people bring up perhaps initially, if it's a new group, introducing themselves and talking about their issues or concerns or things that are going on in their lives, that will probably stimulate topics, and things fall out of that, and the conversation or the sharing might evolve naturally. But I guess I'm wondering, in future sessions or as the group evolves, is it your role or the facilitators to kind of pose a question or to stimulate conversation by talking about a certain thing or a hypothetical, or can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. And when I first started facilitating, I thought it would be a bit more formal and that we'd sort of be expected to bring, certain topics to talk about before the group. But generally, I try to think of it now as just providing a space for people to talk pretty freely about their experiences and just being there to mediate. And, we can ask questions. If there's a lull in conversation, then I'll probably think of some questions, for specific members and say, oh, last week you mentioned you were stressed about X and Y. Did you want to talk about that this week, or how did that go for you? So that's the approach I tend to take. I think attendees, at least from what I can see, really value just being able to come and be in this relaxed environment and safe space to just talk about, what's been going on. But you can most certainly come with topics to discuss. It's pretty up to you. And sometimes that can be useful to do if there's a quieter group or there's a lull, or if the topic is veering off anxiety, but there's something you think could be really helpful to bring up. So, it's completely up to you. I think a bit of both would be great. But again, it's quite free range. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. And I suppose being okay with moments of silence, because as we know that, silence allows people to think, and perhaps exactly. If, that creates the space for someone to either volunteer something or allow them to share more or something like that. So
exactly. Yeah. Exactly, because it's a CBT technique, I think, the silence. So no, definitely. And every group is different. I would say that as well. You don't have the same attendees coming each time. I mean, you'll have regular attendees, but they'll often have different groups with a different dynamic to them. Some groups can be really, really intense and quite, tiring. And topics that come up are quite intense, and other groups can be a lot more lighthearted. So it sort of depends on who's coming, what they're bringing to the group. So yeah, each group is different. I would say that.
Thanks.
No problem.
So I think Peter's got his hand up.
Okay.
Yeah, hi. Just two questions I've got in mind. One is, how do you... sorry. Oops. Yeah, so I've got Marjorie with me. I'm just dropping her at home. So she knows.
No worries.
She knows where she lives better than I do. Yeah, so my question is, when you're selecting people for the group, what's your process to make sure that we're not, that we will have the skills to deal with the kind of issues that they're going to bring to group? And then secondly, what is our legal obligation, even though we're volunteers, as facilitators of the group?
I might ask Rachel, because I don't believe there's any kind of selection process involved in terms of like their diagnosis, for example, or because we're not treating, we're just providing a peer support. So because of that, there isn't really a vetting process from like a diagnostic point of view. But Rachel, I might pass the floor to you on that one, just because I'm not entirely sure how I think it was they can just sign up through Eventbrite. Is that correct, Rachel?
So this
and
is
legally, I'm not sure.
This is in regards to the facilitator skills, is it? Sorry, I got a little bit lost. So the question was about what skills facilitators need?
I think legally, I think the first question was, is there any kind of selection process
for the facilitators?
Or vetting process for the attendees?
Oh, for the attendees.
And is there a legal obligation for the facilitators to have a certain skill set to ensure adequate management of the attendees, I'm guessing?
So with the attendees, there's no screening process or anything. People are welcome to come along, and they can come along anonymously as well. We do now ask people to register, and that's all about COVID. So that happened with COVID. So we ask people to register with our team at Wayahead before they attend the group, and that's really to do with social distancing. But it's actually been quite effective, because then we usually have some sort of contact, like an email address for them, and then the facilitator can easily add them to their email contacts, and they can keep in touch with that person. As far as skill set for facilitators, anyone's welcome to volunteer. We just usually find that people with the right skill set volunteer anyway. It's not like it's a rewarding thing to do, but I suppose it's not like a super enjoyable thing to do. So we tend to have people that have the right skills interested in facilitating with Wayahead. And we try to team up a new facilitator with an experienced facilitator so that they can mentor them along the way. And then we can address any issues that might arise after they start volunteering. Do you think that covers it, Lexi?
I think so, yeah. And having Paul has taught me a lot, who I co-facilitate with, and he's been amazing. And we're good friends now. It's been a great experience. So yeah.
That's an interesting point. It is interesting, the relationship that you develop with your co-facilitator. I know when I started facilitating the groups, I hadn't met my co-facilitator at all. And we have become, over the years, such good friends, because you do share things in the group, and after the group you can debrief with each other. So it is interesting, that relationship that develops between co-facilitators.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's been lovely to get to know Paul. So.
And you'll all meet Paul. He does the last session. He's going to talk about living with anxiety.
Can I ask, Rachel, are sessions back to face-to-face at the moment, or is it still predominantly through Zoom, the group sessions?
So that is a very timely question, because, as Lexi will know, in the last 24 hours, we've just had direction from Wayahead about going back face-to-face. So there's no face-to-face groups until after the 15th December. And then those groups will gradually start coming back face-to-face. But we do have an issue, because we have a directive from Wayahead that says everyone that attends the support group must be vaccinated, and the facilitator needs to check their vaccination status. So we're just still trying to work out how that's going to work, if that's going to suit every group and also suit every venue that the groups are in. And I may as well say it now, actually, I should have probably said it at the beginning. All volunteers with Wayahead have to be fully vaccinated, and that's a mandate from New South Wales Health. in regards to being staff or volunteer of an organisation that's funded through New South Wales Health. So Ben, I'll keep you updated, but we're trying to transition back to face-to-face, and of course we'll have ongoing online groups. There's a big demand for the face-to-face groups at the moment because everyone wants to get connected again, and some people can't access the technology and they're not comfortable with the online. Hope to watch this space. We'll have face-to-face groups probably in January.
Sorry, just on that regard, I know you said that you guys are heading back to face-to-face and there will still be the online version. Is it limited in the amount of capacity of online? Because I know some people, like including myself, may not be able to attend in person, but will have the ability to do online.
Yeah, so we need online facilitators as well. We will limit the number of online groups because there is a maximum where the attendance will drop off, but we definitely need online facilitators. So if you're only able to facilitate online, that's good. You're more than welcome.
I just had a question. So with the co-facilitator, are you like consistently with them, or do you change the facilitator and the group you're with?
So we try to, because we ask for that 18-month commitment at minimum. We do have volunteers that have been volunteering for 30 years. So as maximum amount of time you can give us is best. And we keep you with the same facilitator and the same group. So that's to maintain continuity for the members, because it is unsettling when people come and go for the members.
Vanessa, did you have a question? Is your hand up?
Yeah, it is. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
I just wanted to ask in particular, there's two questions I have. So one is, if you feel as though an attendee is in danger, for instance, because anxiety and depression, normally there is a kind of overlap with those at times. So if there's a process for that, and as well as that, will we be given any external resources, or are we able to provide our own, for instance? So like if we found an article and we're like, oh, we thought this might be informative, would that need to be approved first, or would there be a process for that?
Ooh, because I didn't go through the formal training, that's a good question. I should have asked myself. So Rachel, sorry, the first question I might
so
ask you there.
With the people at risk, during the session that Karen and I run, we'll give you, we'll set out what you're to do if someone's at risk. And it's basically, if you feel a person is at risk of harm to themselves or others, you speak to that person one-on-one. You actually come out of it and ask them directly what their intention is. If they have got a plan to commit suicide, I would be really upfront and really direct, because you don't want any misunderstandings. And then relying on what they say, then you make the decision whether you're confident that that person's okay, or that you need to stay with that person till a next of kin arrives, or you call emergency services. So, and it's a bit trickier in the online groups, though we haven't had any incidents of that in the online groups, but you would isolate that person in a breakout room and one of the facilitators would speak to that person. And we can only do what we can do. Like if someone takes off, we just ring the police and tell them what's happened and give a description. Same with the online group, we just ring the police and tell them what's happened if we think that person's at risk.
Yeah. And I realize I haven't ever come across that in the 2 years that I've been facilitating, but that's not to say you won't come across that. But yeah, it's good to know that's the protocol. And in terms of sharing information and articles, yeah, I tend to do that. That can be really beneficial. So, if you come across a great video that you want to show, or some kind of relaxation technique or anything that you've learned at uni, I often will share things that I've learned at uni that I've, interesting research, things like that. That's a great thing to bring along to the group.
So Peter, is your hand up again?
Yes. Yeah, I just wanted some clarification. on face-to-face, say, versus the virtual platforms. My experience during the pandemic is that a lot more people have got very good at the online platforms. And in my circle, we're starting to look at more hybrid situations so that we do have greater access to the support. So a lot of groups I'm involved with are happy to sort of try and blend both together. Is that a consideration that you guys have put forward yet?
So we haven't gone down that track as yet. We have been talking about it. We have had feedback about hybrid meetings and the people being on Zoom, not intentionally, but sort of being excluded from that meeting, and also the technology required for the facilitator to run it like that. But Peter, if you come on board as a volunteer, I'm happy to trial those sort of meetings with you.
Fantastic. Thanks. I'll put my hand down.
So in answer to your first question, in terms of preparation, again, because it's quite an unstructured group usually, and we talk about what members are experiencing or have experienced in the last week. Not a lot of preparation goes into it, I would say, but if you come across something, you know, that you think would be helpful to share, or you can, you know, write some pointers down that, you know, might be useful, that, you know, that would be great, but I wouldn't say it's a necessity, because usually people have a lot to share, and you know, it sort of takes it runs its own course. In terms of, you know, after a group finishes, you know, it can be quite an intense experience. So I like to sort of relax and kind of, you know, maybe do some relaxation stuff after the group to just sort of, you know, unwind, because, you know, you tend to take a lot on, you know, when you're running these groups. So I find that sort of winding down after can be helpful and beneficial, and just sort of switching off a little bit. But again, nothing really formal, I would say, in terms of preparation. And in response to your second question, Rachel probably has a better answer, but a lot of the group times do cater to the fact that people have, you know, work commitments and things. So they're usually on weekends or, you know, after work hours, but you know, I'm not entirely sure, so I'll let Rachel answer that.
Yes, that's right, Lexi. We have vacancies at groups, which we will send to you before the session that Karen and I do with you. Most of our groups are outside of working hours, because that's when our volunteers are available. We find it really hard to fill the vacancies during working hours, so we only have a limited number of groups running during working hours. And we've found that the most successful groups for volunteers is for them to facilitate in a place and a time that suits them. So we're always opening up new groups as well. So if there's not a group in the area that you choose, we can start a group at a time that suits you. And also in regards to that preparation, there is two facilitators. So you share the role with another person. We do ask people to email their members before the group, which is probably what Paul does, Lexi, I imagine, probably from his email. And we ask for a record to be sent after the meeting to Karen, and that just gives the numbers for the meeting and just a little rundown on what happened. Like we had 6 consumers, 2 carers, 2 facilitators, we had lively discussion about medication and relationships or something like that, and of course any problems. So we need to know as soon as possible if there's any problems in the group or if you need any support. And thank you, Lexi, for touching on that self-care, because that's really important. So after the meeting, debrief with your co-facilitator or contact us at the office, and you can debrief with us and take that time. Really, you've done something really good for people living with anxiety, and so you should reward yourself and really recognise the effort you've made, and also recognise that some things that happen in the group can impact you. So it's good to just treat yourself a little bit of kindness during those times.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
So, Lexi, what would you say is the best thing about facilitating?
I think seeing, when you give advice or, general advice, not overly pointed advice, and a member takes that on and says, oh, that's really helpful, actually. That's probably, really rewarding, I would say. And just being there and providing support and seeing what a difference it makes for people to have the opportunity to come and have that space, that safe space. I think that's probably the most rewarding. Making a difference and knowing you're making a difference is definitely the top of my list for sure.
And we do also evaluate all the members. So we try to evaluate every member every meeting, but of course not everyone wants to fill out the evaluation every meeting, so I understand that. We are doing online evaluations at the moment, and that is the feedback that we get from our groups about our facilitators, exactly what Lexi said. So I can understand that being one of the most rewarding things about facilitating.
Yeah, it's helpful. And it's helpful when, you get, because they have the opportunity to say, what didn't you like about the group? And that's also really helpful as well. Because sometimes people might not feel comfortable to complain mid-group. So that's great too. So that feedback form is very valuable.
Yeah, that's so right. They do. They have the opportunity to say what was wrong with the group, what they found difficult. And those evaluations are forwarded to the facilitator, and they're really, really useful. So I think Peter's got his hand up.
Yes.
Yeah, it makes me just wonder about like advocacy and what resources, is there a resource list to refer people in the group on when they identify with particular issues that are sort of not within the anxiety field?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
I was just going to say, so Paul, who I co-facilitate with, I think he runs the phone lines, which provide resources to people suffering from a wide range of mental health issues. And so I know Wayahead has a big directory, and that's a part of what the organization does, or a big part of it. So I presume facilitators have access to that. I mean, Paul sort of takes that role on a little bit, which is a bit cheeky of me, but so I'm not entirely sure, but I'm sure you do have access to provide those resources. Rachel, is that correct? Because
in my experience, I've been asked to write character references for court appearances, to support letters for applying for housing, and all sorts of life issues that come up for people with anxiety and other issues, where they tend to get into places where they can't negotiate with the bureaucrats and the paperwork to get their needs met. So do you have much experience with that in the groups?
So from time to time I get requests from group members, but it doesn't happen very often. So they may need a character reference or something like that. And if I don't know the group member, I of course liaise with the facilitator. So that's perfectly okay if you need to give a reference or something like that for somebody, but just let us know so that we know what's going on and what's going on for that person. Also, I meant to mention with Vanessa that you are given a Facilitator Manual, and in that there's also some contacts at the end of that manual that might be useful, and you have access to the Wayahead directory as well. You can refer people to that. So we'll make sure, we usually give you like a kit for face-to-face groups, and there's resources in that and little cards with the directory and our contact numbers for our information lines as well.
Lexi, can I ask, do you find that most of the group members are also seeing a therapist or seeking help for their concern or issue, and in a sense that the support group is there to add to their therapeutic journey or however they're addressing their concerns? So I suppose I wonder, my question might be, do you sometimes check in with people maybe to tell you how they're feeling, maybe as a score of 1 to 10, and maybe that's tracked over the weeks? Are they, feeling a 4 this week and a 3 next week and a 2? Then you know that, hey, well, this person is telling me they're not feeling that great. So I suppose what I'm wondering is, and around advice and perhaps, flagging people's what they're sharing, how would you address those kinds of issues if they did come up and you thought that someone was, not tracking in a way that was maybe concerning you?
Good question. So firstly, I would say 90% of the attendees at the groups I run have been to a psychologist or, plan to or are currently seeing a psychologist or a psychiatrist or on some kind of medication prescribed to them by their GP. That is common. A lot of people, attend the groups as an adjunct, but a lot of, a common thing that I've seen, which has actually been a really good learning experience for me, is a lot of people have not found success with psychotherapy or found a great psychologist. That's like a common topic that comes up, actually, which has really been helpful for me to see, because clearly, there's a bit of a mismatch, I think. And so in terms of if we're a little bit concerned, I would say if someone has come to a few groups and they're, repeatedly not doing very well, Paul or I might say, look, if you ever want to reach out to us directly, Paul, it's a bit easier for Paul to say that just because he's within the Wayahead organization. He's a member of staff there. So he usually will be the one to say, look, you can reach out to me and we can talk about this. Or if you're ever feeling, really down and you need someone to talk to, this is my office number. And we, I might generally say, look, it might be worth looking into seeing someone. Again, we have to be careful. I can't say you should see a psychologist, but you say, look, based on what you're experiencing, it might be helpful if you were to go to your GP and discuss potentially getting a mental health care plan and seeking further treatment if it's available to you. And again, another issue as well is, affordability. It's expensive to see a psychologist. Availability, that can be a big challenge for people as well. Like, I've been on the wait list for 6 months. So it's a tough one, but I do like the idea of that rating. I think that's a good way to track. And that could be, your version of the introduction. So we'll normally say, how are you doing this week? But maybe if you feel comfortable rating how you've been doing on a scale of 1 to 10, again, people might be a bit funny about, oh, are you going to write that down and keep score of that? A big thing is confidentiality. So, you could say, if you feel comfortable providing me with this, this rating or ranking of how you're feeling this week, and I keep track of it, feel free to provide that to me. That might be a good way of keeping track, but I think just ensuring that, they feel comfortable with that and ensuring they they're aware that everything is kept on a first name basis. In terms of that. But yeah, I hope that answers your question. Again, it's quite up to you.
Yeah. No, that does. That's some good insight there. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, so in regards to that, we are always encouraging people to seek help outside the group. We don't want people to become reliant on the group, and we want people to be moving forward with their recovery. So always encouraging that help seeking. And if you're concerned about someone, you can always just speak to them one-on-one, just check in and see how they're going. With that rating thing, the group belongs to the members. So the members have to agree to that sort of thing. Some might be really into it, some might not. So you just need to be really open and chat to your members about that. We used to evaluate their anxiety on a scale. We'd say, what was your anxiety like before your first meeting? What's your anxiety like now? But we found that their anxiety would go all over the place, not necessarily anything to do with the meeting. And we also found people would be highly anxious after a meeting because they may have been talking about something that was emotional for them. And we realised after doing a bit of research on the groups that it was all about creating that connection for people more so than alleviating their anxiety, which hopefully is a byproduct of that in the long run. But we really promote that it's all about connecting. But anything that's not classed as therapy, you're welcome to do in the group. And if you have any doubts about it, just check in with Karen and I. But yeah, always checking in with the members to make sure they're 100% okay with that.
Peter, did you have a question?
Not so much as just wanted to share my experience that might help. Sorry, I've forgotten his name. Help answer his question as well. In that, my experience with professionals is because they see so many people, and that might be fortnightly, monthly, or quite big periods. They need to refresh themselves on notes on their clients, usually before they start the session. But what I found in group work, which is more self-help, everybody is familiar with everybody and don't really, after a little while, need to be too concerned about gauging that, because we tend to know because we're practicing empathy and being involved in their life quite regularly and build a rapport. So we've already got that information, has been my experience. So I know when I need to give somebody a bit of extra TLC, and maybe speak to them after a group to check in. So that's been my experience with doing that. I haven't needed to do the pencil work because it does freak some people out for sure if they feel like you're taking notes on them, and it loses the group and becomes more professional. Is what I'd like to say. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. That's some good insight there too. Yeah.
So any more questions for Lexi? Any more comments? Just on what Peter said, our volunteers have a wealth of experience, a wealth of knowledge. So we're always drawing on our volunteers to participate in co-design and things like that and give us feedback about the groups and any suggestions like Ben had and Peter had about the hybrid group. We're willing to take those on board and trial things like that. So please, it's all about us all working together and the facilitators connecting with each other as well. So thanks. And sorry, Lisa. Yeah.
Just when you said connecting together, I was just wondering, is there like group supervision or anything like that?
So we do have a quarterly meeting that Karen will talk about where we get the facilitators together. We generally have some sort of topic and we talk about that. We may have a guest speaker or something like that. And we are working on a Facebook page. So it's almost there. We've just had a few glitches, but once we get that up and running, facilitators will be able to communicate through that Facebook page, because we have found that facilitators really want to be connected with each other as well as connected with their members. So Not really supervision, but more like debriefing and bouncing ideas off each other type of thing.
Cool. Peter, did you have a...
Yeah, I'm a bit of a dinosaur with some things, and I'm certainly not a fan of Facebook. I run the other way, but I quite enjoy setting up WhatsApp groups. I find them work a lot better for me for interest groups. Would that be an option as well?
Well, we could talk to Karen about it when we do the session with Karen. I'll bring that up. If hopefully you'll be there, but if you can't ask a question at that time, I'll bring that up as well. Because I think other facilitators have spoken about that in the past as well, WhatsApp. And not everyone's into Facebook, but we're just trying to do something, really. We're just, this is quite a new thing for us, connecting the facilitators together.
Oh, the principle's great.
Yes, but it's good. It's good to
choices
try.
of application.
Yes, it's good to have choices. Always good to have choices. Yep. Thanks, Peter.
Sorry to jump in, but I think WhatsApp requires your phone number unless there's an email option to use WhatsApp. I might be wrong there, but I thought WhatsApp did require a mobile phone number or something to set it up, but that could be a concern. But
that's great. Thanks, Ben. See, these are the things that we do need to consider, keeping people's details safe, though. We're not as strict amongst facilitators, with facilitators themselves as we are with facilitators and members, but it's still definitely a consideration. So that's great. I would never have known that. I've never used WhatsApp. So that's something we need to consider.
Yeah, true. I was thinking of the actual group, of course, which you wouldn't set up a WhatsApp group with with people, but facilitators, I can see how that's fine, of course. Yeah.
And Vanessa said Microsoft Teams could be an alternative. Yes, true.
Yeah, which people are getting more and more familiar with now during because of the lockdowns.
Sorry, I just had a quick question in that regard. If, for example, let's just say we meet with other facilitators, and let's just say that I'm really interested in their experiences, for example, through some of the pathways or some of the things that they've done and some of their knowledge. So if we were interested in, for example, speaking with them or networking with them and just getting some first-hand experience from them, is that something that's allowed? And if so, how would we go about contacting them just for like maybe a short conversation or something about that?
So if there's a facilitator that you want to get in contact with, you can just let me know and I can liaise between the two how we will do that. And also you're welcome to visit groups too. It's great to go to lots of different support groups and see how people facilitate, because even though we have general guidelines, all the groups are different. So definitely if you want to get in touch with a particular facilitator, I can sort of make that happen in a safe way.
Thanks.
So have we got any other questions or comments? If anything comes to mind after the session, of course, you can just let me know and I can follow up with Lexi.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone wants to have a chat at all, please feel free to contact Rachel and I'll be available. I've just finished my last uni subject for the year, so I'm quite available. So if anyone wants to reach out, please feel free to.
Okay, so I'll send through the link for the next training session. You should have it, but I'll just send a reminder, and I'll also send a link for this recording if just in case you missed some, and to the people that weren't present. And hopefully we'll see you all on Friday. And a big thank you to Lexi. You've done a marvelous job. Thank you. It's been so nice to have you here with us today.
Thanks, and good luck for your exam, Vanessa. And really, good luck, guys. You can get through it. The undergrad is hard, but it gets better after the undergrad, I promise. Oh, it was lovely to meet you all, and best of luck with the rest of your training. And it will be a really, really rewarding experience, I can tell you that. And it's less daunting after the first session.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Yeah,
Look
thanks.
forward to
Rachel.
seeing you all on Friday, hopefully.
Yep.
Okay.
Good stuff.
Bye all.
Thanks.
See
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye all. Have a great day.
Bye. And you.